Hello, my name is Eliza and I'm the Director of Music Makers Academy, and in today's video I am going to go through 6 very important steps you need to go through if you want to start your own music school. Now these are the steps that I think are the most important in making sure that your school operates in a legal way and that you have all the systems in place for your music school to grow successfully without leading to overwhelm. So I'm gonna go through these 6 steps in sort of like a random order. It's not at all the order that you should do them in, but definitely make sure that you do those 6 steps in one way or another. So the first step is to choose a name for your music school. And that sounds really simple, but definitely there are a couple of points to consider when choosing a name for your music school. And the first thing you have to think about is whether you want to include instruments in your music school name. So some music schools are called piano school, or violin school, guitar school. So in the name really specifies what they specialize in. And this can be great if you want to really be known as the expert in that instrument. It can also be really great in order to rank higher on Google, because the instrument that people are going to look for is literally in your name. So you're more likely to be found on YouTube. But the downside to having the name of an instrument in your school name is if you ever decide to diversify the instruments that you offer at your music school, you will have to obviously change your music school name. So that is a big thing to consider. Another point to consider when choosing your music school name is whether you want to include the location in the name. And so similarly to sort of like the instrument name, having the location can be great to rank higher on Google, and it really lets people know where you are located. However, again, having the location in your music school name can feel limiting if one day you decide you want to expand, or maybe you even have to move to a different area or suburb. That will mean you have to change your whole music school name. And so having the location in your name can be a little bit limiting in that sense. And then finally, another consideration is whether your school is only going to focus on music, or whether it's eventually going to offer other types of art forms. So a lot of schools start off as offering music, and then they diversify to include arts or dance and even drama. So you want to sort of think to yourself where you see your music school in a couple of years' time, and if you believe that it's really only going to stay focused as a music school, then go with that. Another tip that I have for you when choosing a name for your music school is to avoid including technical jargon that the average person wouldn't know. So musical terms like espressivo, tempo, whatever other words, I can't really think of any right now, but avoid using that in your music school name. Because the average person, assuming they have never done music before, will actually not know what that word means. And if they actually don't even know that word, there's no way they're going to look up your music school on Google. So avoid using those words, because it's actually going to be a disadvantage for your music school. When choosing a name for your music school, you want to try to encapsulate your school mission within its name. So for example, my music school is now called Music Makers Academy. The reason I picked that name is, so you can see I didn't attach any location to the name. I didn't attach any specific instrument in my name. And the reason I liked Academy is because it really communicates to the audience that We offer music education here, and the word academy sort of has connotations of high standards. We are serious, and so this is what I obviously want my music school to be known for. And music makers, for me, that basically sort of explains to people that, you know, we learn instrument and we are passionate about making music, and so that sort of incorporates a little bit of creativity, songwriting and composing, which I totally love doing during lessons. Now, coming up with a music school name is actually really challenging, especially by yourself. So if you don't really have anyone to brainstorm with, I highly recommend actually talking to ChatGPT or any form of AI, as the bot will be able to reply to you with some ideas, and you can really like refine different names. So use ChatGPT if coming up with a name by yourself is getting too challenging. Moving on to step 2, and that is to define your business values. I think this is a step that a lot of people totally sort of ignore or only think about later. But I think it's very important to have those defined early on. It's basically part of your branding. And so your music school name plus those values that you are going to define are going to set the foundation for your business branding. And business branding, all that it is, it's sort of like the personality of your music school, of your business. And you want to be really clear about that, because if you are not clear about your branding, you might actually end up attracting the wrong people to your music school. So you really need to ask yourself some important questions like, what is important to you? What do you want your students to achieve at your music school? How do you want them to feel at your music school? And so hopefully you will have some words come up, and so these will be sort of your business values. They will sort of guide towards other types of branding decisions. They will guide your processes in your music schools. They will guide a lot of things. So let me give you a bit of a personal story. When I started my music school, I had the impression, or sort of the sensation, that a lot of people, like the majority of clients, just wanted music to be a fun hobby and like not serious, quite a laid back attitude. And so I thought that was what I had to deliver as a music school. And so in the early days, part of my branding was really about making music lessons fun for people. And then what I found that was happening was I was getting people who, when things got a bit challenging with the music lessons, they wanted to quit, or they were never really serious about learning or improving. And the thing that really, really got to me is they were not as committed as I was towards their lessons. And it really, really started to bother me. And so I knew that I had to change my business branding, redefine my business values, and then change some of the messaging and processes in my music school. So now, the 3 top values of my music school are excellence, commitment, and joy. And so now I have those values listed on my website and things like that. And so now, when people are looking for a serious music school, with teachers that are really going to push their child to become better musicians, to actually have results in their playing, they will come to my school. They will not go to the school down the road that is still about music lessons for fun. And not to say that music lessons for fun is like a terrible idea, but that's not who I am as a teacher. And I know that as a teacher, I'm just very, very committed to my students. I think a lot about them. I always try to find ways of helping them. And I expect, a similar level of commitment from my students. And so this is why I decided to change some of my branding. So anyhow, long story short, have a think about what is important to you, what you want to be known for as a music school, and dare to believe in your values. It can be very tempting to just sort of follow what everyone else is doing, but the advantage of doing things differently is that you will start to have a very unique reputation. Step number 3 would be to invest in an admin software. So when you start running a music school, the admin workload is massive, and you will have to deal with a huge number of different things. So things like inquiries, you might have people calling you, emailing you, texting you, messaging you on social media, and so you're going to need a system for tracking all of these inquiries. You'll also need to track invoices, so invoices that people have paid, invoices that are still due. You will need to keep track of lesson bookings, you will need to keep track of lesson cancellations and whether or not you need to offer makeup credits or a refund. The list goes on and on and on. And the best thing you can do for yourself early on is to just, buy an admin software. And there are a number of admin softwares specifically designed for music schools out there on the market. A very affordable one that you can try is called My Music Staff. I actually used it for about 6 months, but now I use another one called Opus One. It's just a slightly more complex and powerful tool, but they basically sort of do very similar things. And so having that system in place is really going to save you so many headaches down the track. As your school grows, you will find that you won't be overwhelmed because everything that you need to keep track of is in one place. Step number 4 is to have strong financial systems in place. This might be one of the most important actually. Because really, to keep your business going, to keep your business strong, healthy, and growing, you're gonna need cash. And the only way to manage cash is by keeping track of your money. So if you've never run a business before, the very, very basics that you have to set up is a separate bank account for your music school. So basically you would have your personal money account, and then you're going to open up a new account, and that is going to be sort of your business account. That's going to be the account where your clients are going to pay into. This is the account that any expense related to your business will be taken out of. So that's the minimum that you have to set up. Eventually, what some of my mentors have recommended me, and this is how I currently have my bank system set up, is I actually have 3 different accounts for my music school. So I have my everyday sort of transaction account, then I have an emergency or a savings account, and then I have a tax account. So eventually you probably want to have a similar way of organizing your finances. But definitely having a separate account for your business is going to be very, very good for sort of tracking those expenses, and also for your accountant if they ever need to submit returns on your behalf. Another part to setting up your finances, of course, is to be able to track your expenses and your revenue. And try to do it on some type of regular basis. I do mine not quarterly, I do mine monthly. And so you really want to look at, the money that's come in and how much you've spent. And every month you might have to tweak some things or make different decisions. So for example, in April, I had a very low revenue months, and I was like, what is it that I can, what are some ways I can decrease my expenditure? So I switched internet providers, I downgraded some of my subscriptions, or I cancelled some of them. So there's always things you can do if you find that you're not really making as much profit as you like, but it does require you to actually sit down and look into it. So as I said, make sure you take the time to get that organized and review your finances on a regular basis. Monthly is probably okay. And then the final tip for this particular step is to invest in an accounting software. And again, there are lots of different options out there on the market, such as MYOB or Xero, which is the one that I personally use. And so that will be great, for doing reports, so you can really check all those different types of reports, such as your profit and loss and balance sheet and all of that. And eventually, when you get registered for GST, you can use your accounting software to sort of prepare your lodgement for you. And even if down the track you start having employees, you can also sort of pay them or process their payrolls through the accounting software. So definitely one to invest in, without a doubt. Step 5 is to actually register your business. So if you are in Australia, you would need to register your business, so it has an ABN. And now the thing to know about this is there are different business structures in Australia, and so you really want to pick the one that is appropriate for your current situation. And I'm not an expert in this field, but the person who is an expert is an accountant. So maybe organize a meeting with an accountant and tell them where you are at, and tell them where you aim to be in the future, and they will likely be able to advise you on what kind of business structure is gonna be suitable for you. The different business structures have different tax implications. So for example, as a sole trader, you would just lodge an income tax return at the end of the financial year. But if you're in a partnership, which is what my business structure is, the business now is like a separate entity to myself, and so the business has to, I have to submit a tax return for my business plus my personal one at the end of every financial year. A company structure usually is only used if you have a really high revenue, and there's all these things. So again, don't just assume that really find out from an accountant who can give you the best advice on this matter. And then the final step that I have for you is to have a marketing plan in place. So as I said before, keeping your music school alive relies on having the cash to pay for expenses. And the only way you're going to get cash is by having students, and the only way to get more and more students is through marketing. Marketing doesn't have to be, very complicated, but you probably do want to have a couple of strategies set up in the early stages of your music school. Luckily for us, there are a number of free or very cheap marketing strategies. Probably in the early stages, the one that is going to be the most useful for you is word of mouth marketing or referrals. And this is when your current students, because they are so happy with your service, they are going to talk about you to their friends, or they're going to recommend you to others. And so obviously the only way word of mouth can work is if you can provide an excellent experience for your current students. Another cheap way of doing marketing is posting in Facebook groups. So you would basically look up the area that your music school is operating in, or suburbs nearby, and you just post something to let people know that you have places available at your music school, what you offer, and things like that. And eventually your marketing might become a bit more complex. It might have various aspects to it, but in the early stages, avoid spending a lot of money on marketing, and instead try to rely on the cheapest ones and see how much you can grow from there until you have a bit more cash in the bank to invest in some more high-end marketing. So these are my 6 steps to starting a music academy. I actually have so many more ideas, but I didn't want to make this video too long. So I hope this was helpful. I really do think these are, 6 very important steps, not just to start with, but if you do them consistently, like if you consistently revisit your values, if you consistently review your finances, if you consistently do the marketing, surely there's no way you can really fail. So that's why I really wanted to include these in this video. But of course, I could have also spoken about hiring people, choosing a space or a location, choosing a business model, all those other really important things. But hopefully this list is helpful to get you started. And so if you are thinking of starting your own music school, I would love to hear in the comments, what name you've chosen for it, what you're going to offer, and how this video has helped you. So thanks for watching, and I wish you all the best in your business endeavor. So exciting. Bye.